Hi, my name is Brooke. Excited to be on WPP TV. I'm joined today by my colleague Kristin Hooper, who leads our BCW Polycultural Consulting Unit. So, first question right out of the gate, Kristin, is why do we use the term polycultural versus multicultural, cross-cultural, other terms this group might have heard?
Absolutely. Hi, everyone. I'm Kristin. Very happy to be here. When I think about it all as an evolution. And I think we start in a place with multicultural, and multicultural typically looks like really thinking and filtering through cultural heritage. So thinking about race and ethnicity. And a lot of times it comes to life in a way where we've got a general market campaign, and we either hope we're going to capture everyone in that, or we do our gen market campaign and we have multicultural bolt-ons. So we speak in a different way with a different look and feel often to African American, USH, Latinx, and other audiences. And a lot of times what that results in is a disjointed campaign that looks and feels different in different areas, and also with ineffective disparate measurement programs. When I think about cross-cultural, again, we're thinking through this lens of cultural heritage and really using that race and ethnicity-based type of planning as a filtering at the outfront. So we're thinking about it instead of just going gem market, general pop plus a bolt-on. We're saying, let's try to deal with this, head on. But there's just one dimension of culture when we think about our model that we're looking through. It holds culture as static, so it doesn't really allow for it to change over time. And so while there's some integration when it comes to measurement, and et cetera, creative programs, we think that polycultural is really more optimal. When we think about polycultural, we're thinking of three different dimensions of culture. Right? We're not holding culture static at all. We're allowing it to be fluid and dynamic as we really think it is in the world today, especially when we know that in 2020, the youngest generation in America is majority minority. We should be coming to the table with diversity and inclusion across multiple dimensions of culture as a consideration. In addition, it allows for us to have a conversation with this, what we call our new general market that's polycultural, where it makes sense and where we can have a comprehensive strategy, where we've looked for connection points versus differences in the data. Right, which the other two models do, but it also allows us, when it's needed for the product, for the service, et cetera, for us to have a very segment-specific conversation that's targeted, meaningful, and feels one-to-one.
Yeah, thank you, Kristin. It reminds me, years ago, we might have our mass market program and then our standalone Hispanic marketing program or African American marketing program, and that's just not how the world looks today. So I'm excited about where we're heading with polycultural. And I want to go a little bit deeper into, you mentioned that we look at three different dimensions of diversity, not just ethnic diversity. So can you talk a bit about those three different dimensions of diversity and identity?
Absolutely. The first bucket is cultural heritage, and that's where we think about those elements that you just talked about: race, ethnicity, traditions, language. The second is the cultural zeitgeist, and we have many different elements in there that we look at. And some that I'll highlight are archetypes, semiotics, pop culture, which a lot of times people will sub in for culture sometimes as well, imagery, codes, religion, spirituality, economics, politics, and values. And then we have cultural status, where we think about lifestyle, attitudes, generations, sexual orientation, gender identification, et cetera.
Yeah. No, I think it's really interesting. And I want to talk about how this translates then into client work. So the BCW Polycultural Consulting Unit, I know it's a combination of solutions both for internal engagement as well as external marketing communication. So talk a little bit about how this mindset translates into a suite of client solutions.
Absolutely. So when we think about the client solutions that we have in Polycultural, we've got some that fall into three different buckets. The first one is research and strategy. We do cultural insights and strategy development, audience immersions. We do primary and secondary research, message testing, and other things in that category. From an internal perspective, we work to develop out D&I strategy and programming, to provide strategic counsel, to have bespoke support programs for vulnerable employee segments, communications audits, interrupter bias training, et cetera. From an external perspective, we have polycultural marketing and communications. Again, we can do cross-cultural and segment-specific programming when it makes sense. We've done a lot to help our clients navigate racial injustice and justice. We do cultural risk mitigation analysis and planning, and we also do creative and cultural risk assessments. From a client perspective, the way that that's shown up in the work is really often deployed across all elements. So with its, our model is really to go from data digestion or ingestion to deployment. So when it's something that's internal, that research pulls into insights and then into kind of a decision analysis testing again, and then we get to actually deploying typically internal programs around either programs or communications. When it's external, then we actually get to campaigns, programs, et cetera, that live externally. One of the best examples I think that I really love of this work is something that we worked on for a client that lived in both the US and UK, where we were really trying to help the client push past cultural blinders to reach new parents. And the client was aiming to kind of depict the realness of motherhood and parenthood in new campaigns to promote a body wash and lotion that was targeting new parents. We performed a cultural risk assessment and noticed that in the assets that were under consideration, there were a number of kind of issues that we found. The first one is that it was really kind of promoting natural births, which we know, looking into, again, starting with the research and looking into how new moms and expectant moms feel. There are women who either A, absolutely do not want to, under any circumstances, have a natural birth. And there are women who really, really want to have a natural birth, and at the end of the day, can't. And either way, if we were going to go forward with a campaign, or the client was going to move forward with a campaign that really seemed to focus in on natural birth being the best route, then we were going to alienate and trigger a lot of expectant and new mothers and parents. The second thing that we noticed is that in a lot of the diverse representation, there were two issues. One, there seemed to be a kind of lot of twofers happening. So for example, when diversity would come into play, we might see, for example, an interracial couple that was a gay couple of two fathers with a child. Right, it looked like the client was, or it would have come across to the public as though the client was trying to get a 2-for-1. The other thing is that where there were Black mothers represented, there were no Black fathers, which could have come across as though the brand didn't really believe that Black fathers were present and accounted for at birth or otherwise. And so really what we look to do with the work is to help clients really identify and navigate around those landmines that might be out there, those blind spots and those barriers to making meaningful connections, so that they're able to make meaningful connections that really drive targets and move them.
That's great. And just final question, thinking about some of these complex topics we're helping clients address. So there's the ongoing complexity of engaging a polycultural audience. And then specifically in some markets like the US, I know that your team is doing a lot of work to help clients engage in and navigate issues related to racial justice, and specifically the Black Lives Matter movement. So can you talk a little bit about how this consulting unit engages around those issues?
Absolutely. So, of course, since the unfortunate murder of George Floyd, there have been so many clients as the world and our nation has their eyes fully on racism and what's been going on in America around how to solve for racial injustice and create more racial justice. And so I think the most proximate issue that clients came to us around was thinking about, how do I respond to Black Lives Matter? What do I do? What do I say? And realizing that that was the house on fire at the time. I think that things have evolved to where clients are saying writ large, we've got to create more racial justice. And what we've been able to do, based on the research study that we've done and the work that we've been working on in general, is come together to clients with a really research data-based plan about how to respond to what you should be saying, where you should be saying it. Really helping to help them realize that you can't just have words. Words are going to be hollow and empty at this point. You have to also have actions that are attached to them. And so helping them figure out, what do I need to do internally and externally to come to market in a way that really creates more racial justice. And I'd say whether that's helping write CEO letters or talking points for media from a broadcast perspective or otherwise, creating holistic 360 programs that help clients both see what they need to do and set goals, measurable goals internally, but also come to market in a more diverse and inclusive way. Externally, we've been doing that work, and it's been really rewarding and exciting, especially around such an important issue. And then I'd say, lastly, helping them really continue to differentiate against the idea of Black Lives Matter as an institution versus as a social imperative, so to speak, right? So there's the organization, and there are things that clients might not want to attach to, like defunding the police. However, we don't have to use Black Lives Matter and address that critical need to show that from the perspective of an organization, but more so from a social imperative perspective.
There's so much there, so much more that we could talk about, but I know we only have 10 minutes. So I'll just say thank you. I love being part of this group and learning from you and the team. It's really interesting and important work that we're doing. So thank you for the conversation, and thank you, WPP TV.